extraordinary item. And I'm just going to make a couple of opening remarks, and then I might ask Dean to just give us a state of play, really, because things are, as you know, changing quickly and moving on. So, as we explained at the beginning, this is our opportunity to get briefed and to get updated on the issue, to understand where it sits, to have the chance to ask both our planners and our lawyers some of the issues that we've been asking. Is this our opportunity to litigate this entire consent? No, it's not. This is not the right place to do that. We don't have delegated authority, nor can we do that under an extraordinary item. What we can do is find a process for the way forward, and that's what I'm recommending here, which is the recommendation that you'll see in front of you, that we, and I ask you to read it, and that this review pick up issues internally and externally. Internally, can we do better? Have we set the dial correctly around land use rights of the property owner versus the environment and community rights? Have we got enough support in place for our local boards? That's an issue that's been raised very clearly. And also, and equally importantly, have we got the right support in place for iwi? And it's really clear to us that this is an issue that's been raised by our independent Māori statutory board members and iwi representatives, and are we giving full voice to the Waitakere Rangers Act? I think it's quite right for us to use this as a live case to do that review and that piece of work, and then to use that externally as an example of a live case that we can feed into our discussion on the RMA review that is currently ongoing. The shifting rights around tree protection have been a concern over the last few years, and this is our chance to sit down sensibly with government and talk about that. We've had two ministers wade into the debate asking for the tree to be saved. It's good that they're on board and see the impact of some of those changes in legislation in the real world. So I think this is a good chance to take that opportunity. So I'm going to advocate most strongly through this that we listen to the state of play, that we understand the legal repercussions of this, that we understand the limitations on us, and that we respect our staff who are going to give us this information. Councillors, I'm not going to tolerate cross-questioning, and I'm not going to tolerate abuse of staff, nor am I going to tolerate bad behaviour. We haven't covered ourselves in glory to date on some of these issues, and I am going to be very, very firm. So I'm going to hand over to Dean to just give us the state of play.
Look, thank you. The state of play is, in effect, a short summary, because I think much of it's already understood. But on the way through this week, I just want to reiterate staff and council understands that these situations are very challenging for the broader community and all those involved, and the positions that they take. Important acknowledgement. So at this stage, what we've received, and many of you would have received at the same time as we did, an open letter to Aucklanders from the landowner. It is a set of conditional statements which we will work through. We have also been made aware of the community group's expectations, so we now have those care of a press release, and I thought, and we've taken out some good things from the Waitakere Rangers local board in terms of their expectations about what moving forward looks like. So I see the role of
excuse me.
I see the role of council and staff in particular going forward as bringing those groups together in a constructive way, in a calm way, and looking at how we can now address those different sets of expectations in a fair and transparent fashion. What you'll hear today from Julie Bevan, David Oakhill and James Hassel is an overview of the facts as we understand them, the information we've received, and it's very much the same as what this Parks Committee received the other day, and Environment Climate Change as I understand it. So it's a presentation on the information, the process that we undertook in making a decision, and the consultation that was undertaken as part of that. I've touched on the steps forward. I don't think I need to do anything further there, but except to say that I personally have been in dialogue with the developer. I'll continue to do that, and our objective is to create an outcome that is more acceptable than what we've currently got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Right, who's going to kick off? David, welcome.
Thank you. As Dean said, my name's David Oakhill. I'm the Resource Consents Manager based in Henderson. To my left is Julie Bevan. Julie's my manager, the manager of Resource Consents. And to my right is James Hassel, the manager of our legal regulatory team. So obviously today I'm here to talk about resource consents in Patarua Road. I gave a presentation on Tuesday, and I've tried to remember what I presented, and I hope to present the same today. So look, I'll give you a bit of information on where the sites are and some background. I'll talk through the process. I'll talk through some of the considerations, and then I'll hand over to Julie Bevan to talk through the communication that we've had around the topic during the processing of the consent. So the sites are located to the south of Titirangi. They're in Titirangi, to the south of it, as shown by the arrow on the slide. So the background is that there are two sites, number 40 and number 42 Patarua Road. Number 40 contains the kauri tree, and that consent was approved in November 2014. The second site, number 42, is the site that contains the rimu tree, and that was approved mid-2014. Both sites are bush-clad. They slope steeply down from the road into a gully. They are zoned as bush living, so the sites are residentially zoned. There is a reasonable expectation held by the landowner that he would be able to develop on those sites for residential purposes. The site is within an SEA, a significant ecological area, under the unitary plan. So one house or dwelling is proposed on each site, with a footprint of around about 85 square metres, with additional decking associated with it. The proposal will result in the removal of some native bush. I just wanted to clarify a few points from I guess, the consenting perspective. One of those is the ages of the trees. We've never been presented with any information to verify the ages of those trees. It was not something that we sought or considered as part of the resource consent. Look, I've received a number of pieces of information from arborists around the region over the last couple of days that suggest the tree is somewhere in the region of 150 to 200 years old, the kauri. But the reality is that to verify that, we would need to core test the tree. As Sandra spoke to, the kauri is not the only kauri in this immediate area, and that would have been one of the things that featured in the planner's decision. There are a number in the area, and there are two larger kauris on the road reserve outside, number 40 and 42. Another point raised by Sandra, or discussed at least, none of the trees on this site are scheduled. They're generally protected by the district plan, so you do need resource consent to remove vegetation on these sites, but none of the trees are scheduled. And another important point is that both resource consents contain strict conditions relating to I guess in this context, replanting on the site. So I've certainly not looked at every piece of media coverage, but my sense is that there seems to be a bit of confusion between number 40 and 42. The issues are quite similar, apart from communication, and Julie will talk about that at the end. But for the purposes of this presentation, I've focused on number 40 Patarua, which is the site with the kauri tree on it. I've done that purposefully just to try and give an overview of the situation, and as I say, the issues are quite similar. So I hope that's okay. Okay. So the process that was followed, the consent at number 40 was processed. Sorry, I'll start again. The applicant made an application to the council in mid-2014. They provided a planning assessment along with a range of specialist reports, ecology reports, an arborist report and engineering information. The resource consent was processed by an experienced planner. The planner visited the site and considered all the information. A number of council experts assisted the planner in making their recommendation, including an ecologist, an arborist and an engineer. All of those officers visited the site. The officers considered a range of factors. One of the main issues they considered was whether or not the Kauri could be retained. This level of consideration did mean that the consent took longer to process than the statutory 20 working days. And I'll talk a little bit more about those considerations in a minute. All the officers concluded that the proposal was acceptable. The planner made a recommendation to approve the resource consent on a non-notified basis. The decision, and this goes for both consents, the decision was made by an independent commissioner. The commissioner visited the site, reviewed all the material and agreed with the recommendations made by the planner. A range of conditions were imposed on the application, including Kauri dieback controls, replanting on the site, including a number of native species and weed management across the site. So, as you'll see from the aerial photograph on the slide, the one in red is number 40 and the one to the right of it is number 42. These are some of the last sections in this particular area to be developed. So just to recap, the site is zoned bush living, so a residential zone. The role of a planner is to assess the effects of a proposal, finding a balance. In this case, the plan provides for residential development on the site. The role of the planner was to assess the effects of the building, whilst protecting as much natural vegetation and bush as possible. The staff considered two main options. I'm going to try and use the pointer.
Just need to remember to point at both,
David,
so
okay.
that people on both sides can see.
So, this is the site, obviously. The Kauri is somewhere in this area. The site slopes down, and you'll see this area, which is a gully, effectively, with a green corridor running through it. So, one option considered by the applicant, presented and considered by staff, was to develop towards the bottom of the site, to try to retain the Kauri. The specialists agreed that this would involve the clearance of more bush. Sorry, you told me I didn't. So this is the site, this is the Kauri. The site slopes down and we've got a green corridor coming through here.
Could you show us where the building platform would be?
The approved building platform will be, it's going to be tricky, will be in this area here, so where the Kauri tree is. So the building platform is in this area.
So the rest in bush, stays in bush?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. So, so that the option was the one option to put the dwelling towards the bottom of the site. Specialists agreed that this would involve more bush clearance because you need to gain vehicle access to the site, to the building. It would implicate or could implicate other trees on site. There's a two large puriri trees towards the rear of the site. And it would have a negative effect on the green corridor that I spoke to. The specialists could not guarantee the long-term health of the Kauri if it were retained, as work would need to occur around it to secure access to the site. The second option considered, and the option that has resource consent, is that the house be located towards the front of the site, hard up against the boundary of the site where it meets the road. The kauri tree, is in the middle of the proposed housing platform. The specialists all agreed that whilst the removal of the kauri tree is regrettable, minimising overall bush clearance, protecting other trees on the site, and ensuring replanting and weed management across the site would be beneficial. I'm going to hand over to Julie Bevan to talk through communication.
So communication was undertaken with the local board on the application for 40 Pataroa Road, as quite clearly outlined by the local board chair, Sandra Coney. The first application didn't involve any local board communication. It wasn't one of the matters that was on the triggers that the Western Office Resource Consent Unit had for discussing matters with the local board. They raised it, there was a discussion about that, and it was subsequently added as a matter that is now routinely looked at to seek feedback from the local board. So for 40 Pataroa Road, we did receive feedback from the local board, and that information was passed through to the decision maker. I note local board chair Sandra Coney's comments in terms of that they feel they don't get feedback about that or further discussion. I think that's something that's definitely worth looking into, and some further discussions on whether these triggers and these signals are set correctly. I also note the comments that she made with respect to the time that people have to turn information around. It is a hard ask. We're being asked to do this in 20 working days, but I think a bit of communication there, a bit of discussion, and we'll see where we can go. So I think that's a useful further discussion point from this. But quite correctly, she set out the process and what happened, and that they did provide some information, but that they feel that there's a lack of feedback in terms of that. And clearly they, one of the things they identified was that they would like the application notified, and the decision of the Independent Commissioner was that it would be non-notified. The process around communication and contact with iwi, that's really been formalised through the unitary plan. So since the unitary plan has been in place, that process has been developing, and I think it would be fair to say we're still working on that and still looking to improve it, but we're looking to get there. In this particular case, the consent did for 40 Pataroa Road did trigger the need to discuss with iwi whether a cultural impact assessment was required, and that process can be either directly by the applicant to the relevant iwi, or it can be undertaken through a council process. In this case, it was undertaken by the applicant, who contacted the 7 iwi, and there were no requests for a cultural impact assessment to be undertaken with the information that we've been provided. So that was the communication that went on. We did receive information and some feedback from a number of the residents in the neighbourhood, and that was also provided to the duty commissioner who made the decision.
Okay.
We're happy
So James,
for any...
did you wish to add anything?
I have nothing separate to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions that any member
Lovely.
has.
Well, what I might do, just to make sure that we're clear on where we're hoping to go with some of this, is I'll put my recommendation up there, and I know Councillor Cooper wishes to second it, so we'll just, as long as people know transparently what's up there. So we'll start with questions before we actually go to the recommendation. I'm just making sure everyone knows where we're going. Councillor Wood, it's useful. I've got a question from Councillor Casey, Councillor Clow, Member Tai Party, Member Councillor Wood, and Councillor Fletcher.
Can I just check that I have the right to move an amendment by asking questions now? I can still move my amendment and speak to it.
Yeah, no, you can ask questions, it's fine.
A couple of questions, David. Why did you recommend non-notification in light of the views of the local board? That was a question that Sandra asked this morning.
I guess so. Just to clarify, it wasn't me that did it, but this council staff, obviously. The local board input on notification, and their views were taken on board together with all other relevant specialists. The planner made a decision, made a recommendation that, on balance, looking at all the evidence presented to them, that the consent should be non-notified. They presented that to a commissioner, and the commissioner agreed with that recommendation.
So just on that process, we also heard this morning, I think it was from the petitioners, that there's a peer review process internally. Can you tell me what happens when the planner, I'm not sure what level that planner's at, but what happens when his recommendation is made? Who reviews that, and what was the peer review process that was referred to earlier?
Okay, so I can definitely talk to the question. I'm not sure about exactly what the peer review process is, but a planner prepares a report. They look at all the evidence and they prepare a recommendation. In this case, that was reviewed by a senior council officer, a team leader, for accuracy, and then it was referred on to the independent commissioner to make a decision. So the peer review element was the team leader looking at that information.
Right, so it was signed off at senior level. Is that, what level is that?
That's the level below me. So a manager's level.
Right, so you wouldn't get to see something like that?
Typically not, no. So I would oversee probably in the order of 1,500 consents a year, and I have 4 teams reporting to me that do that job on a daily basis. So I don't get to see everyone, no.
My second question relates to iwi consultation, and we heard at the Parks Committee from Glenn Wilcox, who said that the report that went to iwi was a technical report that did not refer to the filling of the Cowrie. Can you confirm that? What
I have is a letter that was sent by the applicant to the 7 iwi. There is no direct reference to the Cowrie, you're correct. So there's a letter which says, we're seeking your advice as to whether you want input. This is the proposal, and it talks about we're proposing to build a dwelling with some vegetation removal. So it's not specific about what or what isn't being removed.
So when the planner made the decision not to notify, that information was, he had that letter and realised there was no mention of the...
yes, she would have had that information.
She would have had that information. And the team leader would have had all of that information in reviewing the non-notification?
Correct.